allow me first to express my deepest sympathy for the wife and family of Sergeant Terry Lang, Vancouver City Police, who was brutally murdered last night in the execution of his duty. Not much more I can say on that at the moment, and now here's Ted with the rundown.
Our British Columbian students studying on borrowed time and money. The Canadian Federation of Students has just released a report on the financial plight of students in BC. Tonight, Webster looks at some of the problems facing students who finish school with crippling debt loads. But first, at last, both the federal and provincial governments have agreed to talks concerning native land claims. But who's going to be doing the talking? The provincial government spokesman is in the studio with Webster. Bruce Strachan, Minister of Intergovernmental Relations.
And the MLA for Prince George South and the former Deputy Speaker of the House. You fascinate me, Mr. Strachan. It looks on the surface as if you've actually changed your attitude and are prepared to sit down and negotiate titles and Aboriginal claims with the Indians. Is that not false?
You're right. It's false. We've taken the position as a government that title is a federal responsibility. We're not prepared to accept it. We take the position that title was extinguished by the acts of the colonial government, and that's where we stand. In terms of other initiatives, provincial initiatives, we're prepared to talk to the Native people about
Let me get that quite clear. Gardy Gardam taught me with all these lectures and these letters that what the Indians want, constitutional authority to substitute Indian law for any federal or provincial law that they don't like, and authority to make laws which would be paramount over Canadian law, including the Charter of Rights. That's what they want, and that to Gardy Gardam and the Bennett government was totally unacceptable.
And the position remains with the Bill Van der Zam government.
But I've read and heard that you've got a new enlightened attitude towards Indian land claims. Now, what is your new and enlightened approach?
Well, I'll accept enlightened. I won't exactly accept new, because what we're interested in doing as a government and as a cabinet committee that I happen to chair is to, in fact, develop initiatives for Native peoples that we can as a province. These are not new in the sense that we have precedents for them, instruments of economic development, social policy, education, matters that we can deliver as a provincial government. We're prepared to do so. And that's one of my prime responsibilities.
We come to Lyle Island and Moresby and whatnot. That land belongs to the people of British Columbia as a whole and will stay there.
Well, let's hope so. I'm precluded and prohibited by sub judice to discuss matters that could be before the courts.
Now, that of course, and this is not a remark which is sub judice. I should imagine that the nightmare is that one of these days a trial will get into court and a judge will give title perhaps to 70% of Vancouver Island or a vast tract of the interior in the courts. And then where will you be?
Where will we all be? Well, the Native people will have that title if that happens in the court. But that remains for the court to decide.
Yeah, but it's dangerous, is it not, to let these things into the hands of the courts, and surely the only solution must be through the hands of politicians.
Well, I believe so. That's your basic position on the Charter, isn't it, Jack? And I think you and I agree on that.
Oh, forget my agreement, but I know what's in the Charter. The other point, though, which is worrying a lot of people in the Gitscan territory, is this Liz pendants on some 20,000 square miles. And although they've exempted on the list pendants some privately held property, I know of people up there who have done their improvement and their agricultural leases, and they can't even borrow a nickel on the land now.
That's right. That's right. The improvements they've done and that ag lease that the government gave them is worthless at this point until a court case is heard. Again, Gitscan is before the courts as well. So, again, sub judice prohibits me from commenting further.
No, but I get the message quite clearly. In the meanwhile, however, are you going to sit down with the Indians and talk about these other initiatives in the terms of services or whatever they are at some conference in the near future?
Exactly. That's the position I took. When I took this portfolio on November the 6th, I looked at the initiatives that had been taken by previous governments. And they're spasmodic, but nevertheless they're there. Good examples are the tree farm license for the Stuart Tromblor Band. The Nishka have their own school board. We have woodlot proposals. We have social services programs about to take place on native bands. And so it occurred to me that if you talk to the native people, and from what I've heard, what they want is cultural and economic self-determination. So it occurred to me that maybe we can set the issue of title aside and start dealing with programs that will really help them, such as economic development, such as education, such as really having their own determination to manage themselves.
Because everyone's agreed that in the past 100 years the Indians haven't been entirely treated with what you might call scrupulous fairness or consideration.
The record hasn't been all that good.
So the next step is to try and convince the Indians to settle for less than what I seem to gather they want. Every time I speak to them, they want independent of provincial jurisdiction, self-governing native Aboriginal enclaves or entities.
In many cases, the native leaders of the province of British Columbia, the native leaders of Canada will say they want a third level of government, they want their own sovereignty, and they won't settle for anything less. And that's a hardcore position, but that's one that's taken.
If that came about, of course, you would eventually have a white backlash from non-native people, would you not?
Well, I think so, and you know, it has to be pointed out that there are 366,000 square miles of land in the province of British Columbia, and under claim or under acceptance for claim is 300,000 square miles. As a matter of fact, Jack, potential there for Salt Spring. Your sheep could be on the table in more ways than one.
You're just trying to upset me. But of the 360,000 square miles, 300,000 is potentially under claim.
Yes.
Well, that kind of reduces it to the absurd, does it not?
It does, and many of them are overlapping.
Well, has any spokesman for any Indian group indicated to you that they like your, quote, initiatives?
So far, so good. The best feedback I've had is the Seashell Band, and we have enabling legislation there that's going to give them a municipal style of government. It's a federal bill that must be dovetailed with provincial legislation. We're discussing that now, and I think we could see that in the spring session of the legislature. So, now, Seashell have a good land resource, many non-native lessees on that land, so that is a resource, and that really becomes their instrument of economic development.
And I know that at the Aboriginal conference in Ottawa in April, the Métis are going to make a chunky, sizable claim on land for British Columbia.
Yeah, they're in a difficult situation in British Columbia because by definition, Métis are not an Aboriginal people. And secondly, by history, there was no Métis presence in the province of British Columbia. There was a presence, and as a matter of fact, there was an accord and agreements in Manitoba, Louis Riel. But in the province of British Columbia, we don't know what to do with the Métis question because most of them are from the prairies.
The big difficulty you face, even with your hardline attitude, is that the federal government takes a much softer line, does it not?
They appear to be. David Crombie took a very soft line. The new minister, Bill McKnight, is, I think, a bit more realistic. First of all, he's a Saskatchewan member. He's not from downtown Toronto. And he knows what the problems are, and he knows that they can't be addressed immediately, and everything is not warm and cuddly. There are some serious concerns out there.
And your basic position is that if there are any entitlements given, the cost of these Aboriginal claims must be paid entirely out of the federal pocket.
Exactly. And they don't have enough money to do it. We know that.
Just on a couple of other subjects. You're obviously the spearhead for Premier Van der Zam's attack on getting more money from Ottawa. What's your first target? He always says, as W.A.C. Bennett did, Bill Bennett did, I don't know about Barrett, that we get the short end of the stick on federal purchasing and federal contracts.
Exactly.
What's your first target?
Our first target, or our first exercise is the Polar 8 icebreaker. Southeast Coal to Ontario Hydro. Other initiatives. We want to see our fair share. We contribute 11% of Canada's revenue by way of income tax from the province of BC, and we're getting far less than 4, maybe 3% in terms of federal procurement. And that's a problem.
Well, the Feds seem to be committed to giving us, how big is the icebreaker contract?
There's two figures, and I really can't quote them at this point, Jack. I'm sorry I'm not prepared for that, but it's substantial. And there's a design component in there as well as construction, and we'd like to have both.
Well, I wish you luck in your new talks with the Indians, although I'm glad I clarified what I think was some inaccurate interpretations. Your position is no change in the BC government position. Any land claims which did exist were extinguished at some time or another, with certain exceptions, you know, the Nishka one and some of the old ones in West Vancouver.
Well, we're still pretty hard on line on that, but where reserves were established, yeah, we take the position that's Crown land, and British Columbia entered whole in 1971, and it's going to stay that way. 1871.
Your calls to Bruce Strachan, Minister for Intergovernmental, not Affairs, Relations, after the break. My sincere apologies. I read my notes wrongly. The name of the officer who died in the execution of his duty last night was, of course, Sergeant Larry Young. My sincerest apologies. Back to the program. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd like to know that if the Indians do get all their land claims in, what's going to happen if their system fails? Or, who's going to pick up the tab for it? It's probably going to fall back on us, the white taxpayer.
Correct. That's right. The position of both governments is that the federal government has responsibility and care for the Indians, and if they make that decision and if the courts go along with it and there is a fallback position to go to, I'm sure the Native people would be approaching the federal government for some assistance.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Strachan.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, you have a committee that you're chairing, namely to deal with some of the issues with Native people. I'm just wondering what your initiatives are with the committee that you formed.
Well, as I indicated earlier, caller, there is precedent for many good initiatives. There are tree farm licenses, there are Indian education programs, there are social services programs, and so the wisdom of this committee, which has some breadth to it, I might add, including it has 6 cabinet ministers on it, is to discuss with the Native peoples, and there are 196 bands in the province of British Columbia, and they all have different ideas of what they'd like to do, but to discuss with as many of them as we can what we can do as a province. More tree farm licenses or education programs, whatever. Whatever the initiative is, whatever they think they can handle on their own, we'll discuss it with them.
More municipalities?
Well, I heard that comment. Seashelt is a municipal style of government, or at least that's what's anticipated. That's because that's what Seashelt wants. It's not totally accepted by other Native leaders. One of the main reasons being is because it is a form of government that's subservient to the federal and provincial governments, and many Native leaders won't take that position. They want sovereignty.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, the white people always claim they want everything to be legal, and they can produce a bill of sale for everything they own. Well, I would like to see that if the provincial government or the federal government can produce a bill of sale from the Indian people saying that the Indian people sold this land to the BC government or to the federal government. And until they can produce that bill of sale, I consider this land stolen from us. And no matter how many times it changes hands, that land is still stolen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's your opinion.
Go ahead from Nanaimo.
Hello, Mr. Strachan. What
Yes.
I was wondering, how much money does the BC government spend on the Native Indian Department of Affairs?
The Department of Indian Affairs, sir, is a federal department, and I couldn't comment on what their budget is, but I think it's substantial.
Yes, it is. And actually what the government is they're acting as middlemen. All that money is going into these coffers, and the natives, why can they not administer that themselves? Why do we need the government as middlemen?
That's a good question, and I know in Prince George, my riding, the Carrier-Sicani people, I think, are reaching agreement with the Department of Indian Affairs Federal to, in fact, administer some of their own of that Indian Affairs funding. I don't know the mechanism of that, but I think there's discussion on its way.
That obviously would be part of the wheeling and dealing if overall settlements were made. The amount of money currently being spent by the Indian Affairs Department, which is widely excoriated, for instance, there's $175 million a year for non-insured health benefits for 350,000 Indians, they say. That would become part of the deal. That makes sense. Go ahead from Terrace, BC.
Yes, Mr. Strachan.
Yes.
I have nothing against the Native people. I believe that we should all be equal. I think that they've been paid out already. I mean, we've been looking after them for, as far as the government goes, paying free medical. They get free taxes if they live on the reservation when they're working. Anything they buy, vehicles, furniture, anything, it's all tax-free. I'd like to know why I couldn't have the same deal.
Because you're not a status Indian living on reserve, sir. That's the answer, pure and simple. And I'd like to see equality too, and that's exactly what I'm getting at, and what our cabinet committee is getting at, is establishing equality, and what programs we can deliver for a non-native, we should be able to deliver to a native person if we reckon they're responsible and can handle it.
Go ahead, please. Oh, nobody there. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster. Mr. Webster, if the Indians want
Go on.
the land, Why wouldn't they be willing, say, to pay back every cent they have been given by the government over the last few years?
Well, that's a little simplistic, isn't it, Bruce?
It is, and quite frankly, I don't think they could.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I suggest that the last 100 years, the amount of money that the Indians have got from the white people in Canada would wipe out our national debt.
I don't think it's quite as much as that.
It is. It has to be more than that, even.
It's substantial. I don't think it would equate to the national debt, which is really substantial.
Go ahead, please.
Hello,
Yes.
Hello.
Mr. Webster.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to say to Mr. Strachan that, the provincial government is now wanting to get in on the pie that the supposedly the big pie the Indians are getting from the federal government. Then when it comes right down to it and they're asked to get in on the negotiations for land claims, why are they now wanting to say, oh, it's the federal government's decision? If they want to be in on everything, why can't they be in on the decision-making too, instead of pushing the, they're pushing back the responsibility to the federal government? I just don't see that.
Well, ma'am, it's a good question. The federal government in 1973 took the position that they would accept comprehensive land claims. And it wasn't until 1985 that they even advised the province of British Columbia what the extent of these claims were. So we really are a newcomer. We knew they were happening, but we didn't know the extent of the claims, the land area, how they were developed, and so we were essentially kept in the dark for many years as to what the claims were.
The federal government accepts land claims in detail from within British Columbia and puts it on their list for the next matter to be tried or tested or worked up or negotiated.
Yes.
And you weren't informed about these at all?
We have been lately, and they've told us the extent of the land claims and on the evidence that they're based on. Because a land claim is based on historic use by the native people of a certain area. They lived here, their village was here, and they trapped here or there, and from that description they give the federal government
the federal government decides the possible validity of their claim.
Yeah. They adjudicate it and accept it or reject it.
That's kind of difficult for the provincial government to deal with, isn't it?
We were kept in the dark for many years.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Strachan.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard the news, but Fletcher Challenge is purchasing BC Forest Products right now, and given that you have to deal with FERA or talk to FERA on the federal level, I'm curious if you are like the idea that BC Forest Products is, again, another BC company is being sold to, in this case, a New Zealand company.
Well, didn't they make a big purchase here already?
Yes, they've already bought Crown Zellerbach.
And I noticed the BC Forest Products stock was suspended. Has it been announced that it's...
It was just announced just a couple of hours ago that Fletcher Challenge is purchasing BC Forest Products, and I'm curious about his reaction and what sort of response he will be making to FERA.
Not the FERA anymore, it's called Investment Canada.
Investment Canada, yeah.
Are we consulted on that, Mr. Strachan?
Not that I'm aware of. I wasn't. Presumably the Minister of Forests has been aware of those negotiations, but this is news to me, and there's not much more I can say at this point.
Yeah, because remember Bill Bennett said BC was not for sale, refused to deal on Mac and Blow, and then Naranda came in the other way, bought Mac and Blow, and BC was sold.
Mm-hmm. Let's not lose sight of the fact, though, that any forest company, irrespective of ownership, has to operate under the laws of British Columbia. We collect the stumpage, the royalty, and so the cash flow, the management, still comes to the provincial.
Still comes under the provincial suzerainty. Go ahead from Aldergrove.
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, this is one country, and the whole country belongs... Are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
The whole country belongs to every Canadian citizen. I don't care. I was born here, so it belongs to me. Some people came here and became citizens of this country, it belongs to them. The whole thing.
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
And in terms of title, ma'am, that's the position of the government of British Columbia.
Thank goodness.
And you will fight to the death to defend that position.
That's right.
My thanks to Bruce Strachan, Minister of Intergovernmental Relations. We'll see you in the House beginning of March.
Good.
I'll be back with some student problems after the break. Every year there's a great big fuss about student loans, student grants, student fees, student aids, and things are always getting worse. And it's probably the truth. And with me tonight is Stephen Scott, Executive Officer of the Canadian Federation of Students. 50,000 BC students. Is that
yes,
right?
yeah, in our organization, yeah.
Compulsory membership.
No, not compulsory. If you belong to a student society that has held a referendum to be members,
You belong to that.
Then you belong to the Canadian Federation.
Okay, you're my general background guy. And then I've got Jill, who's
Spicer.
Jill Spicer from SFU. And you are a fourth-year fine arts student at SFU. Right. And here we have, I've got to get this name right this time, Kyong-Ae,
That's correct.
who is a third-year law student at UBC. Okay, convince me that you're being badly treated in loans, grants, and everything else, Stephen.
Okay, Jack, the basic problem is this, is that in the 80s, the costs that students have been asked to assume to pay for post-secondary education have risen far greater than students' ability to pay. What we've seen is that colleges, institutes, and universities, in response to cutbacks in their operating grants, have increased their tuition and incidental fees. And in fact, they've passed these cuts directly onto students. And one good example is that tuition fees have increased at all colleges and universities between 100 and 250% since 1981.
Between 100 and 250.
That's right, yeah.
1981. And then, of course, a number of grants. Who were the baddies who cut out the grants to students?
Well, the provincial government cut out the grant system to students in 1984 and replaced it with an all-loan program. And then BC at that point became the only province in Canada that didn't have a grant system for students.
I see that Alberta gives 117 million in student aid. How much do we give?
The government gives about $17.5 million in student aid, so it's roughly about just less than 8%. It's about a tenth.
If I borrow from the government, what do I get? Do I go to the federal government and the provincial government?
Well, the way it works right now is that you have to borrow the full amount of federal loan before you're eligible for the provincial loan. So the total amount of loan you're entitled to is about $5,600 per year.
If you've got a family, you might get a few hundred more.
Yeah, a couple of hundred more.
And what's the interest rate at the moment?
The interest rate is it's a prime plus one. I'm not exactly sure what.
Is there any harassing in the way of debt collection?
That's becoming a growing problem, especially with the BC student loan portion. Students graduate with these debts of $15,000 and $20,000. They can't pay for them, they default, and they're turned over to collection.
Let's look specifically at Jill. How do you stand now? Are you working?
No, I'm unemployed right now.
Unemployed.
I'm on unemployment insurance.
So you get how much a month?
$340.
$314. Now,
$340.
$340. Many years were you at university?
4.
Taking?
I was in the film program up at SFU.
And how much do you owe now?
$18,000.
$18,000. Do you know the percentage rate?
No, I don't.
I think it's 9.5 or 10.5.
I believe it's 10.5 for the BC student loan and 10.75 for the Canada student loan at the moment.
At the moment. Now, if you were working, what would you be expected to repay right now?
$285 a month.
No, but you got a Challenge 86 job last year, which put you in the big money and enabled you to save, did it not?
Oh, yes. I was making $500 a month.
And Challenge 86? For how many months?
4 months.
4 months.
It's $2,000.
$2,000. And didn't you have a loan payment you had to make?
Not at that time. You have something like 6 months before you have to begin your loan repayments. So I didn't have to start making my payments until November.
Yeah, but if you put aside your loan payments, you would have had to put aside $900 out of your $2,000 in income.
That's right.
That's right. Now, if you don't pay back that loan, what will happen to you? And you obviously can't pay it back just now, can you?
Well, right now I'm on a loan remission program for the federal portion of my loan, but the provincial government loan has no remission program. So what that means is that shortly I expect the debt collectors to be giving me a hard time.
I don't quite understand that. The loan remission on your federal loan,
they pay the interest on your loan. So your loan stays the same, but they pay the interest. But the provincial government doesn't do that. And so...
so your loan from the provincial government keeps timing all the time?
That's right.
And you're due to pay interest on the interest when it's added to your total debt?
That's right.
Well, how are opportunities for jobs in fine arts these days?
Pretty bleak, whether it be fine arts or any field. I mean, I've been trying to get a hold of just about anything. And say I go and apply for a waitress job, you'll have about 100 or 200 applicants for each job. And my waitress experience is about 4 years old, and so they're going to take somebody who has more recent experience.
Not easy to get a job, is it?
No, it's very, very, very difficult.
Now, Kyong-Ae, you're a third-year law student at UBC.
Yes.
How much do you reckon you'll owe the government by the time you finish?
By the time I finish, I'll have a debt of $14,200 approximately.
Does it worry you at all?
Of course it does. It's interesting that we did a survey in law school, and stress levels from financial worries was very high, next to marks.
So, at the moment, do you have to make repayments, or are you merely building up debts all the way?
No, I don't have to make any repayments while I'm in school, and then I have that 6-month grace period after I graduate. But in October of 1987, I'll have to start repaying back my loans.
By that time, you won't have finished your articling then, will you?
No, articles are for 1 year, and in fact, there are reported cases of people getting paid zero for their articling because articling jobs are not that easy to come by. And so in order to get articles and in order to become a lawyer, they're working for free. In addition, the average wage for articles is about $1,000 a month.
And so meanwhile, you'll be piling up the interest on your loan endlessly all the time.
Well, I'll hopefully have a job and I'll be paying back while I'm articling, and
You were telling me that they don't actually put debt collectors in, do they? And the depths of my ignorance seem to find that I find that unacceptable.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you default on your provincial student loan, they sell it to a collection agency.
Yeah, now, what about the grants? What kind of grants did BC give before they were stopped?
Well, the way it used to work is that you would get a portion of your student aid in a provincial grant, and that could range up to $2,000. In 1984, when they eliminated the grant program, you still got some provincial monies, but that was now all loan. And so we're looking at about $20 million a year students are assuming in debt load.
Mind you, there was one cabinet minister in the last government. He didn't get a post this time, and said that if you can't afford to go to university, you should just wait until you had enough money to go to university. Do you feel it's developing into university for the rich and not for the poor?
I'm afraid so, Jack. I mean, one of the problems of the loan program is that it reduces access to those people who have other help to go to school. If they've got parents that can help them and they don't have to take this big debt, then you're more likely to go. I mean, if you live in the interior, you come from a not terribly wealthy family, the cost of going to university on an all-loan program is just staggering.
What would the cost be of going to university from the interior if you had to pay your tuition, pay your accommodation as well and a student residence?
I can estimate, maybe $25,000 or $30,000
over the term of your.
Over the time 4-year program, yeah.
So there are no grants at all whatsoever nowadays. BC has cut its student aid money loans to $17 million. It used to be double that, didn't it?
Yeah, they used to in 1982, 83, it was $33 million, and they've halved it, basically.
Jill, but this is not a fair question, but if you had known that after 4 years of university and no job and being in UI and looking for a waitressing job, that you would owe $18,000, would you have gone to university?
I still think that I probably would have gone.
Yeah, you too?
Yes. Well, obviously, my job prospects are somewhat better than someone with, say, a fine arts degree, although there are still problems for those in professional schools.
There are lawyers coming out of the woodwork everywhere nowadays,
Yes. Well, in the last call, about 35% were unemployed as the date of their call.
Now, what's the answer? What would you do, Stephen?
Well, we just released a report that has 46 recommendations, and some of the most important are to return to the grant program. We think that's the key to an accessible
That was up to what,
education.
$2,000?
Yeah, that was where it used to be. Yeah. But right now, the government has a program that costs them about $17 million, the core of which is a $20 million loan program. That is, the students are assuming about $20 million worth of debt, and the government is paying $17 million for that. It doesn't make very much economic sense.
What else do you want done now?
We'd like to see tuition fees reduced. We'd like to see special operating grants to colleges, institutes, and universities, specifically for the purpose of reducing or eliminating tuition fees. Tuition fees are like user fees in the healthcare system. Everybody pays income taxes to fund the post-secondary education system, but only those who can then afford to send their children or who can afford to pay the tuition fees get to go. And we feel that It's not fair.
Well, we're making some reaction from students. I hope so too tonight to Steve Scott, Kyong-Ae, and Jill Spicer after the break. Stephen Scott, Canadian Federation of Students, Kyong-Ae Kim, and Jill Spicer. And this caller, question or comment or whatever. Go ahead, please.
Yes, what I would like to know is I'm presently a student at Simon Fraser University, and I'd like to know how a student can ring up a debt of about $14,000. I myself have paid about $1,400 in tuition, but what do they do during the 5 months that they're off of school from, say, April to September? Are they not working to try to raise the money? And if they can't raise it, why don't they take off a year in between university just so that their debt won't come out to $14,000 at the end of their schooling time?
I have a $14,000 debt, and I have worked during the summers, but I don't make a lot of money. Last summer I was making $6.67 an hour, and that's about $4,000 at the most for the whole summer. When I pay my tuition fee, which is $1,800, that reduces the amount that I earn. Plus, there's the amount that I pay for living expenses during the summer. So by the time I enter school, I don't have a heck of a lot of money.
And you've been 6 years at university.
Yeah. Fortunately, I didn't get any loans during my undergrad years. I lived at home and had parental support, and that's how I managed to keep my loans down as low as I have. But I know people who've got $35,000 in loans in law school.
I have one other question, if possible. Since you're representing a lot of the students in that, can you explain or justify the fact that I recently transferred from a university in Montreal where I did pay $600 in tuition to Simon Fraser where I'm paying about $1,400. Has that ever been approached to the government concerning like almost $1,000 difference by the time you get books and everything in? How that can justify it?
Well, we've been notoriously cheap about the assistance given to students. Does that shock you at all, Stevens?
The fact that students in Montreal would pay $600? Well, I know that that's the case. It's shocking, the cost of tuition in British Columbia, yeah, and we've made numerous representations to the government and to institutions. But the problem is that the government cuts back the operating grant to the university or the college, and they feel they have to make it up through tuition fees.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, yeah. I've had 7 years of post-secondary education, and I've just recently graduated. I have a BSc in biology. I finished and ended up owing $15,000 in student loans. Mm-hmm. Most of that was not tuition fees. It was mainly a living expense for me. I'm from the interior, and I had to pay for accommodations down here. My tuition fees were just minor expenses.
And are you happy with the outcome? You've got your BSc in biology and you owe $15,000.
I'm happy with it. I wish I had a job. I don't, but other than that, yeah.
Tough to get a job in biology these days, isn't it?
Sure is.
Much obliged.
Okay.
Bye. Nice to hear from the students. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Mr. Webster.
Yeah.
Yes, I attended Summer Fraser last year for 1 or 2 semesters, and I'm on welfare right now. And if you're on welfare and you can prove it to your bank, you can get an interest relief form from the bank, and you can stop payments until you get you're off low income.
Yeah, you were telling me about that, weren't you?
That's just the federal part of your loan, though. That doesn't work for your provincial part of your loan.
Well, it's all done through the one bank, like mine's the Bank of Montreal.
It's still separate, though.
Yeah, they are separate loans.
Yeah, the interest keeps running if you're out of money on the provincial section of the loan, but the feds actually absorb the interest when you're not in a position to pay.
Yeah, it's only for 18 months, so it's not until you get a job. So if you're in that situation after 18 months, which is not uncommon, you're out of luck.
How much time have you got to pay back your loans on the face of it?
It's 10 years right now, and one of the recommendations we're making is that that period be extended to 25 years.
Have you recommended that the government pick up the interest and you only repay the principal?
That's not one of our recommendations.
Not one of your recommendations, because 25 years you're going to be paying $50,000 for a $15,000 loan, aren't you?
But part of the problem is that it takes so long for people to get established now when they get out of school. I mean, jobs are not readily available, and you'll go through a series of low-paying jobs before you eventually...
See, in the good old days, up to 5 or 6 years ago, you could come off in the summer, go work in a pulp mill and pick up 12, 14, 16 bucks an hour automatically.
Can't do that anymore.
Thanks very much. Go ahead, please.
Jack, I can't understand the students who can't live without grants and who are demanding that their loans be interest-free. You know, back in the days when I went to school, we had to pay our own way.
Ah, but you went in your bare feet.
Pardon me?
You went in your bare feet.
Yeah, that's true. I did a lot of things on my own because I had to make my own way. I wasn't given gifts all the time, nor did I have a parking lot out there that's full of new cars.
Oh.
What I'm concerned with is they should be acting as responsible adults. If I borrow money today, I'm responsible for that. And I'll pay my loans back with the interest that I agreed upon. I'm not going to crying around and say, give me an interest-free loan.
Well, we've
you can
said
negotiate that. I love it.
Well,
I'd like to hear their response to that. Why should they have interest-free loans if I can't get one?
Well, they didn't ask for interest-free loans. It was me. It was I who threw that in. So we'll let Steve answer you or the girls on the other one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The situation has changed considerably over the last 10 years. And what we see now is that in order to get a job, you have to have more qualifications, greater skills, more training. Basically, society is demanding that people have, a greater amount of training. What we're saying is if society is demanding that, then society has to be prepared to help people get that training. And with the all-loan program as it is, it's preventing people from getting to post-secondary education. As I was saying before, I mean, the greatest cost of post-secondary education is paid by the taxpayers through their tax dollars. And the cost of tuition and living expenses above that is what's keeping those same people from going.
The people I feel sorry for, maybe I'm wrong, are the people from up country, from the interior, who have the additional cost of traveling back and forward, living, if they can get a place on campus, not that cheap. How much does it cost to live on campus?
Well, it varies, $3,200, $4,000 in residence with meals.
Could I answer
Sure.
that as well? I'd like to say I'm not out for a free lunch. I'm not saying that I'm not going to pay back my loans, but it's very hard emerging from school strapped with a $14,000 debt. And I'm doing things to try to minimize my costs. For instance, I'm sharing a one-bedroom apartment with a roommate, and my roommate has the living room as her bedroom in order that we keep our costs down.
That's good. And you're skimping by in UI, $340 a month. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm a student out here at UBC, and I've got loans that are about $10,000 this year. And I think your last caller really got across my point in that with all these students whimpering and whining like these people are, that we should get free money and whatnot.
Oh, they're not whimpering and whining.
Oh, they are. They always want more. You give them something, take it away, and they always want it back again, plus on top. And, you got to look at this as an investment in the future. You're going to make back in the future much more than you've put into it here in this 4 years or 5 years, whatever you put into it at UBC.
Fair enough?
Well, no, I think the problem is that people are graduating with debt loads that they can't handle now, $20,000 debt loads.
But you got to think of that ahead of time.
Well, of course you do, but that's one of the problems. There isn't enough information about the various loan programs and what the consequences of borrowing that money is for students. I mean, students have a responsibility for sure to figure out how much they're going to owe, but so does the government that's pushing student loans, or not pushing.
Well, let me.
They're not pushing it. That's free money for all the time you're here and 6 months afterwards.
Yeah, but
basically what I want is a break in terms of between the time now when I have not secured a job and the point when I can secure a job, when I can pay off my loan. And I don't think that I should have to pay interest on interest in the meantime, having my loan escalate.
Well, I'll make a stronger and political point. This government of Victoria, strapped to it is for money, has always been notoriously cheap and picayune about tuition fees and students. And if we're going to progress as a province with a proper standard of education, we've got to make sure that, one, we use our universities to full, and that we assist those who are going to university to get through without coming out with a back-breaking burden on them. Exactly. And you got to watch Willie van der Zalm just as you had to watch Bill Bennett. Bill Bennett was not exactly a great supporter of universities, and hopefully van der Zalm might be, but of course he's totally strapped for money now. They're going in to make up this budget at the moment, and they're down $1 billion in operating losses for the year. They've got a tough job. But they're a wee bit anti-intellectual, I suspect. And as a well-known intellectual, I don't like to see that. Well, my thanks to you anyway. To you, I hope you get a job in fine arts. What is a fine arts job? I don't even know what it is.
Fine arts covers, the fine arts program of at SFU covers theater, dance, visual arts, music, and film.
Am I in fine arts?
No, I don't think it's quite fine arts.
We know what
it
you're-
has its arts, but...
We know what you're going to do.
Hopefully.
What about you, Stephen? You're a professional administrator of the Canadian Federation of Students.
Well, for the time being, I'm staff person, yeah. For
Staff person.
Yeah.
You don't owe any money.
I paid off my student loan, yeah.
How much was it?
I was lucky. I went when the grants were available, and I owed about $6,000 at the end.
You got rid of them.
Yeah.
Well, you've been very informative tonight, and I'm on your side. The hell with it.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
And I'll be back with a free-for-all after the break. Where am I going? I don't have anything to throw. I just want to apologize again about that stupid mistake I made tonight, and please don't mention it on this free-for-all. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello. My husband is a student at UBC,
Uh-huh.
and you wanted somebody who's from up in the interior?
Yes, I'd like to hear about your experiences.
Yeah, well, we were given a student loan of $5,000,
Uh-huh.
and we were expected to move to live on that, and also pay tuition, books, everything.
Where did you come from in the interior?
From Kamloops.
And that was your federal and provincial student loans.
Yes, it was.
How long have you been down?
Well, he started in September.
How are you going to, and that 5,000 does you through the winter, right?
Yeah, that's supposed to do us till the end of April.
Can you make it?
Just barely, maybe.
What's he taking?
Well, he's taking computers, computer sciences or something.
No kids yet, eh?
Yeah, we have one, and I'm expecting one in 5 weeks.
Well, and you're not working, of course.
No.
No, you can't. Well, okay, thanks very much and the best of luck. Go ahead, please.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm calling about BC Hydro and their system of demanding payments. We owed them $105, and we're only overdue for a very short period of time. It wasn't even 2 weeks. And they were going to come out here and cut our hydro off with no explanation. I explained to them, my husband had been out of work for some time. He had just gotten back on his feet, and they were going to come out here and shut our hydro off in the middle of the winter time. We have electric heat. How do you get through to these people that, you're not there to steal their money away from them? This is what she accused me of, that I was stealing their...
Well, they were harassing you on the telephone, were they?
Yeah, they were. They asked me to keep in touch with the one lady I talked to. She was good. She asked me to keep in touch with them and make as many payments as we could, and we did. Every month we made a payment. We got 1 month behind, and then I called her and explained to her that my husband was out of work, but he was starting, and then they're going to come out here and shut it off anyways. How do you get through to those people? They're so money hungry and power hungry.
Well, I'll tell you how to get through. The next time it happens, phone Peter McMullen at Hydro and tell him Webster sent you.
Thank you. I will.
Peter McMullen.
Oh, McMullen?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Very nice guy. Go ahead, please.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm from the Okanagan. I come from Enderby, and I went down to university. I studied chemistry. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in chemistry, and I racked up some student loans. But the thing is, I came through with only $5,000-$6,000 in debt. I had a part-time job.
How long ago was that?
What?
How long ago?
I got my master's in '84, end of '84. So I did get some grants, but not really very much. Even at that time, the loan portion was 75 or 80% of all the money they would give you.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, I have a job in my field. You say that maybe there's no jobs for biologists or chemists in the Lower Mainland. That's just not true. The thing is, people go to work in the pulp mills to make money. That's fine, but it comes out. You come out of university, you have no useful skills. I took jobs at Triumph and in the chemistry department, paying me $600 a month, just so I have some valid experience. Now, when I go for an interview, I can say, well, I've been working, I've got a consistent work record of working in my field, and so I get a job, and these other people don't get a job.
Maybe you're brighter than the other people.
Well, that could be. That could be.
Well, thanks for your experience, and best of luck. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack. There's one thing I think your listeners should know about. If they're in financial difficulty with a student loan, they've got the same right to make a proposal in bankruptcy or file a petition in bankruptcy than anybody else who is in an impossible situation. has.
I didn't know that, to the federal government.
Yeah, there was a very recent court case that held that a person was entitled to be relieved from their obligations under their student loan on the same criteria that anybody else would be. That is, they've got less income and assets than they have liabilities.
You'd go to a trustee in bankruptcy and show them your assets and your liabilities and make a move to go into bankruptcy.
Yeah, and I think they charge you about $1,000 to do it, but the court recently held that you could do that.
And does that wipe out your student loan?
It would wipe out your student loans, or you'd be required to make a small payment towards the amount you owed on the student loan.
A good tip. Thank you very much. Calls are still coming in, the students. I thought we might get something different. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Mr. Webster. I caught your program late, and it was talking about the student loans.
Yeah.
I was wondering if your listeners were aware that the Ministry of Post-Secondary Education does offer a loan remission program where a student could apply to the ministry provided they completed their education, whether it was college, technical, or university education, and got a degree in 1984 or later. They could have 25% of that loan reduced.
Well, I wasn't told about that. That's Hagen, is it?
Yes, it is. And further, if they had to travel from the interior to come down to either SFU or the Lower Mainland to get it, they could apply for an additional 8%.
So you can get up to 33% remission if you got a degree in a college, a university, or whatnot.
Exactly. All they have to do is complete the program of study.
And get their...
And then they apply to the ministry. And I think the program was brought in simply because the provincial government did have problems in collecting the student loan.
Oh, that's a very good tip, and you know that for sure, do you?
Yes, I do. I could send you the information if you like.
Please do.
Okay.
Much obliged. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I missed the start of your show, but I was wondering if you mentioned the fact that the federal government actually contributes 110% of the cost of higher education in British Columbia through transfer payments.
That's always been the claim made by the federal government, and the provincial government denies it. But the transfer payments, generally speaking, go into general revenue, and it's very difficult to track back, except on the estimates in the House, what happens to education. I believe that you're correct in that.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. It's been ever thus. Go ahead from Kamloops.
Yeah, I'm calling from the interior.
Yeah.
What these students should know is that, and that's an old story, but there is so much pie to be cut. And they're usually the same people who want the free baby care, the free transportation, or the subsidized transportation. There's only so much we can stand. And if they want free education, then when they leave and have children, they've got to say, okay, well, we don't want to have free child care.
Yeah, I know. I admire perspicacity, but I must tell you that times have changed for the likes of thee and me, and we've got to accept
No,
it.
but there's still only one pie. Times might
That's
have...
right, and it can only be cut one way, but I'll be back after the break. Tomorrow we've got Michel Coté, the Minister, Federal Tory in charge of Canada Post. You can nag him. And a very interesting guy called Gwyn Dyer, the fellow who does the television series on war, The Defense of Canada, at 5 p.m. tomorrow.